This lecture focuses on tuberculosis. Why tuberculosis as part of respiratory pathophysiology may be something that you are thinking about. Well, tuberculosis initially attacks the lungs. Okay, the disease starts within the lungs and then expands to many more organs and ultimately death. Okay, it's an infection, bacterial infection, Mycobacterium tuberculosis is the bacteria that is an aerobic bacteria that can be easily spread simply because it's the airborne type of spread. Somebody with this infection, the droplet can escape from their body and maybe be received by the person around the person who is infected. So now the host is the one that actually contains the infection. Note that about 3.5 billion people are infected of this bacteria, and about 2 to 3 million die from this disease every year. Okay, so it's the leading cause of death from an infectious disease, a curable one throughout the world. As I said, it's the airborne spread of infection. All right, it's the droplet. It's very small because this is the one that travels through the airway, large in the alveolus. To be specific, more like the distal area within the lung. The distal alveoli are where you commonly see this. Well, it's actually in the alveolar macrophage. Alveolar macrophage engulfs this, phagocytoses this, and then they would be called phagosomes. Okay, those alveolar macrophages, having phagocytosed the droplet, will be referred to as phagosomes. It's a common term. Now, phagosome is typically brought in contact with the lysosome so that the lysosomal content can destroy the pathogen. However, here the bacteria would secrete a substance that prevents the fusion of phagosome with lysosome. That's how it survives. Then within the phagosome, it simply continues to expand. And you have macrophages and these tubercles within them appears as a granulomatous lesion. Okay? You have heard of this in the immune discussion. Granulomatous is where you have lots of leukocytes. These are granular leukocytes. You're going to recruit neutrophils also to phagocytose these bacteria. So you not only have macrophages, but you may also have neutrophils around this infection within the alveoli. Now, accumulation of exudate in alveoli. Exudate is, there could be a couple of different types of exudates. We have talked about this in the previous videos. Exudate here would be a mixture of white blood cells, neutrophils, and monocytes mainly, macrophages. Then the bacterial debris and inflammation and fluid due to inflammation. So it's a mixture of cells and fluid in the alveoli and the debris from the destruction of the white blood cells infected with the bacteria, containing bacteria. So all of that would cause inflammation locally within the alveoli. And you call it as bronchopneumonia. Simply call it as pneumonia if that's easier. Pneumonia because of bacterial infection, and that is tuberculosis because it's a specific type of bacteria, mycobacterium bacteria, mycobacterium tuberculosis. All right, so we have seen the progress, okay, the droplet arriving in the alveolus, multiplying within the alveolus, then the phagocytosis, then the granulomatous lesion by the destruction of the pathogen by the phagocytes. Now, the arrival of phagocytes and the infection together would be a granulomatous lesion. Then the reaction between the phagocytic cells and the bacteria causing death of the cells, and the debris and the death of the white blood cells, and all of that leading to inflammation is what's going on with this disease. All right? Caseous necrosis is very classic of tuberculosis. That is the cheese-like tissue that appears within the lung that is affected. The lobe with the infection is cheese-like. Okay, it's nothing but the local tissue that's destroyed because of inflammation, because of infection, having this cheesy mass, and eventually it calcifies and then also becomes fibrous. So this becomes a scar locally. All right. Again, it depends on whether this bacteria goes into a latent state, a dormant state, or an active state. In majority of the cases, the bacteria remain in the dormant state. About 90 to 95% of the infected individuals have the bacteria in its dormant state. About 5% of them will have the active disease, only 5%. All right. Then whatever triggers the activation of the dormant bacteria, okay? AIDS has become one of the common conditions that tends to trigger the bacteria from the dormant to the active disease. You can assume why. That's because AIDS is where the immune system is compromised. So there, the bacteria is activated to cause injury within the lung and elsewhere, and ultimately death. So that's one example. Or one may say that the bacteria that's in the body may continue to be inactive, but new infection is the one that triggers the active disease. It's possible either way, okay? So you may see the spreading of this to other organs, especially the liver, right away, and then the brain, etc. Now, that's when you would call it as millet tuberculosis. It spreads to other organs soon after the lung infection in an active disease condition. All right, so first it's the lung, then the other organs. All right, so with this, let's talk about its clinical manifestations. If you have latent tuberculosis infection, you would be asymptomatic. Okay, you won't have any clue. The only thing is, if there is a test, tuberculosis test they do, it may show as positive for a tuberculosis infection. In an active state, most of the signs and symptoms are very similar. It's a bacterial infection, so you can expect fatigue, weight loss, lethargy, anorexia, low-grade fever that occurs in the afternoon, night sweats, and purulent cough. Okay, it's diagnosed by the positive tuberculin skin test, where a purified protein derivative is placed, and if there is a reaction, then you're positive. It does not mean that you have the active disease, but you carry the bacteria. Sputum culture, immunoassays, X-ray are the other guides to diagnose the disease. All right, this is everything for us. Thank you.